to it? Anything on your bodies? Sensations on your body? How about if we combine image and sound together? Most people react just like you did. And so quite a number of researches were made on why do we react the way we do to nail scraping a blackboard. One research found that it resembles the sound of the alarm calls of apes, and our ancient conditioning is reacting to it. A more recent research found that it has to do with our anatomy, the ear canal. Our ear canal amplifies at certain frequencies, and so the nail scraping a blackboard has that range that our ear amplifies, and so it irritates us. But we really cannot change everything that causes us unpleasant sensations. It's just impossible. And we run into visions and sounds and smells and taste and touch every day of our lives. We cannot just wipe everything. 26 centuries ago, there was a brilliant scientist, the Buddha. He made a 6 years research, and at the end of that research, he found that every input, every data the mind receives through the sense doors, the sense bases, every vision, sound, taste, or smell or touch evokes a sensation on the body. And we are blindly reacting to it. The mind also brings some dramas, memories, thoughts, emotions, anger, fear. It always comes with a sensation on the body. The remarkable thing was that he found that we actually react to the sensations and not to the outside object. Like the mind receives an image, a form, a shape. Immediately it will recognize it. Human being, a man, good looking, scary looking, and reaction will come with a sensation. If it's a handsome guy, pleasant sensations. Scary guy, unpleasant sensations, and our breath also will start pumping. That scientist realized that we react with craving constantly. You just saw a number of examples before which were gross and intense, and you felt the sensation of the body, but actually, every moment in your life, even right now, your subconscious mind keep producing reactions. You change your posture. You were not comfortable. You changed it to a more comfortable position because you don't like the unpleasant sensations, right? Or maybe one of you came with a real tight pants today, tight belt. Soon enough you may find the speakers annoying. You really would want to get out of here, but it's because you didn't come with your pajamas or anything loose that would make you enjoy today. So we don't even know that we keep reacting all the time to sensations being evoked on our bodies. The Buddha gave a mental practice to come out of the blind reactions, and it is called Vipassana. It means to see in a special way, like insight, like to realize out of experience. And I was lucky enough to get to know about a course, a 10-day course in Nepal, 26 years ago. Silent retreat where they taught Vipassana meditation. I didn't know exactly what meditation was, but I couldn't believe it when I sat there 10 hours a day for 10 days and discovered that I'm actually not reacting to anybody who insults me. It's not to the person. It's to the unpleasant sensation he evokes on my body. I don't suffer because of my sadness, which I had. It's the sensations that came along with that emotion. And so at the end of that course, I couldn't wait picking up the phone to everybody I knew and call them and tell them, you have to go. And I was in Nepal, I was living in Nepal at the time, and I called the whole world, whoever I knew. Some took it seriously and even went, but people like my sister, for example, She was like, Eilona, you sound like a missionary. And when she said that, it sank in, seriously. I stopped telling people about this experience, but I felt I had to do something. So I decided to make a film. I collaborated with Ayelet Menachemi, a very talented filmmaker who was also a meditator, also wanted to volunteer and serve in a way that people will know about these courses. And we figured, let's do a round-the-world tour. There were, back then, 25 meditation centers who were teaching this technique, exactly the technique we're talking about, by the teacher, S.N. Goenka. And we decided we buy all the equipment, a commando team, 120 kg of equipment. We go around the world. We film in every center. But what kind of film will come out of it? I mean, people are sitting there, closed eyes, 10 hours a day. What? Going for lunch, drinking, sitting. We started getting cold feet as we started touring, going from American centers, French, German. We came to Asia, and then it clicked. At least one place we knew we have a film, and that was Tihar jail in Delhi.
For decades, Tihar was notorious for its inhuman conditions. It was branded a veritable hell.
A horrible place, but a change came to that prison with the program of Vipassana. They decided to turn one of the wards into a Vipassana center because they wanted most of the prisoners there to go through this program. And why? Because they were fighting with recidivism. Criminals being released, committing crimes again, coming back to jail, about 70% recidivism. The Vipassana program brought it down finally. So they really wanted it. Now a glimpse of what it looked like is here.
On the fourth day of the course, Vipassana is taught. Students learn how to observe objectively all the sensations in their bodies, whatever they may be, without reacting to them. They watch emotions come and go. They watch pain come and go. They watch pleasure come and go. And they realize, not intellectually, but through their own experience, that nothing is permanent. Hatred, passion, greed are not abstract anymore. By watching the physical sensations accompanying these emotions, and by understanding their impermanent nature, one can actually start changing the habit of blind reaction. Between the two poles of expression and suppression lies a third option, mere observation.
The film was successful. It showed in many television stations, but then it landed in the hands of Dr. Ron Kavanagh, and he's working with Donaldson Prison.
When you introduce Vipassana, then you're talking about this meditation technique that starts where cognitive behavioral therapies leave off.
In Donaldson, which is a high-security prison, most of the inmates will never go out. Most are either on death row, or life without parole, or lifers.
These prisoners live inside a dangerous social world. Overcrowding, deprivation, and hopelessness drive men towards extreme aggression and despair. In this environment, self-reflection and change are difficult, if not impossible. In January 2002, the prison undertook a radical experiment. It allowed a 10-day meditation retreat based on ancient Buddhist teachings to be held inside this modern-day maximum security prison.
The gymnasium had been transformed from a place where people yelled and hollered. There have been a lot of fights in there. There have been people that have been assaulted in that area. and it had been transformed into an area where you took off your shoes and walked to a mat to sit to meditate.
These people are locked in for life from a very young age. Some of them were so angry for years. The first time that they had some relief was when they were taught how to sit down these 10 hours a day for 10 days and observe the sensations coming up with their anger that usually caused an immediate reaction. There was a 20% reduction in disciplinary action, and so they decided in Donaldson to bring Vipassana in periodically, at least 4 times a year, so that many more prisoners will be able to go through this program.
I've always been angry. I took anger management, stress management, but anger management is showing me how to conceal that anger. And stress, it teaches you basically about the same. When I went to Vipassana, I sat on that cushion for 10 days, that showed me how to let it come up and deal with it. Don't suppress it. Bring it out and deal with it. I've done that. One makes a mistake. I made a mistake, and everyone can change. I can say I didn't change. It feels good.
So, if it wasn't for Vipassana, I wouldn't be able to stand here and talk to you, because I was a very shy child and adult, painfully shy, stressfully shy, that I never dared talking in front of people. And I used to get sick with fever, high fever, every time I needed to go in school and face the students, which were my friends. I just couldn't do it. It's not that it's not stressful now, it is, but I'm coping. So I just wanted to let you know about this opportunity to bring a change to yourselves. Thank you.
My ego is really aggressive. It comes up without me knowing. Only after the ego is gone do I find out. How can I manage my ego sooner? That is not uncommon. There's probably more than you, the questioner, who has that, who experiences that. As more presence arises, so first of all, it's important to invite presence into your life in ordinary situations when you're not being challenged by another person. The anger mostly is probably with people or situations, but most situations involve people. So be present when you're out in nature, by not labeling things, by observing in that state of alert attention. And presence then emanates more and more through you. This doesn't mean that necessarily you will, next time the ego comes up being aggressive, it comes up so quickly that you can't catch it in the moment. But as the presence in you grows, manifests more strongly, usually what happens is the time period that elapses after you've been taken over by anger gets shorter, until you reach a point where a few seconds after it's happened, you suddenly realize it's happened again. Whereas before you might have needed several minutes or even an hour. In some cases the next day you realize, what was that? When you had a huge drama with somebody, probably involving the pain body, Your pain body is probably predominantly has the anger vibration predominantly. And pain body that is not recognized as pain body becomes part of the ego. In the same way that any thought that you completely identify with becomes part of the ego. In the same way, an emotion that you completely identify with becomes part of the ego. Once you recognize the pain body as the pain body, then it is an energy field in you that still operates, but strictly speaking, it's no longer your ego. Ego can only operate as long as you're unconscious. So, although sometimes people say to me, I'm able to observe my ego now, in the way I use the term ego, that's no longer true. The moment you become aware of your ego, it's not really ego anymore. It is still a behavioral or mental, emotional pattern that operates in you. But you are present when you know that there is this pattern operating in you, then you are not it. It operates in you and you are the space around it, which is the consciousness. You know it's there. Then before it was ego, yes. But when you recognize it for what it is, it's no longer ego. Ego means unconsciousness. Ego means complete identification. So whatever you recognize in yourself isn't really ego anymore. And so then, as presence grows in you, you reach a point when immediately after this episode, pain body episode, anger episode has just happened, you suddenly realize, oh, it happened again. And then I predict, if it hasn't happened to you yet, it will. A time comes, perhaps very soon, when in the middle of it, it already has taken you over, and you're shouting at someone, and in the middle of it, you realize what's going on, that you've been taken over by that. You still may not be able to stop it, don't have to, but the awareness is there in the middle of it. And that may happen many times. And then you may find the awareness is there just the moment it begins to arise. The moment the anger pattern wants to come in, the awareness is also already there. Now, whether or not at this moment you can stop it, we don't know, and never stop it by suppressing it. You stop it simply by shining the light of awareness on it. That eventually stops it. So you can, and then at that, when there is presence is strong enough for that, then you actually begin to have a choice. Do I choose to engage in the same way through my pain body in this situation? Is this the best way of dealing with the situation? You may not literally ask yourself that question, but it is implied in that state of awareness. You have a choice. You're no longer at the mercy of the old conditioned pattern. And then it begins to dissipate. So I predict that this will happen, that presence more and more will come in at earlier stages, and then in the middle of it, and then at the beginning of it. But you need to cultivate or invite presence into your life in ordinary situations, in helpful situations, so that it can be there in challenging situations. Don't rely on challenging situations alone. That's not going to work. Invite it into your life in situations where it's easy, where situations that lend themselves to presence. Nature, walking in nature, looking at the sky. Or if you can't get out into nature, look at a flower. Just for half a minute. And not just look. While you look at a flower, and this is just one example, could be anything natural. While you look at a flower, you're not only aware of what it is you're looking at, the sense perception. You don't need label, the name of the flower is irrelevant, all that you don't need for this. You look at a flower, you can not only see whatever it is that you see with your visual sense, your sight, but there's more to the flower than what you see with your visual sense. And that is an alive presence. Very hard to talk about it. Remember I believe I quoted it the other day, from the saying from Saint-Exupéry, all that is essential is invisible to the eye. All that is essential is invisible to the eye. So although the flower is beautiful, within the flower there's hiding a presence that is invisible to the eye. The flower has a presence there. It's not by accident that in many spiritual traditions flowers are sacred symbols. In Buddhism, for example, and other traditions, certain flowers are sacred symbols. The mandala itself, the sacred mandala paintings, basically many of them are based on flower designs. Flowers are naturally occurring mandalas, and so there is what is essential about the flower. Yes, there is the external beauty, but the real meaning of beauty is there is an inner essence there. But you cannot sense that when you are looking at the flower through the screen of conceptualization. So you have to drop the screen of conceptualization, which is thought, and look at the flower and give it a little bit of time. And then you begin to sense something, but where do you sense that? You sense it in yourself. What is it that you sense in yourself when you look at the flower? It's both in the flower and in you. It is the essence, the animating consciousness behind this manifestation of this beautiful manifestation of form. There is, beyond the form, we could call it the animating spirit. And that is the same animating spirit which is consciousness that is in you. When you have access to it in yourself, you can sense it there. But giving complete attention, for example, to a flower can be very helpful in deepening the access you have to it in yourself. So the flower can teach you stillness, because the flower is very still, and teach you other things, because stillness is only one particular signpost that we use to speak of it. So you sense the essence of the flower, which is sacred, and you can sense the essence of yourself, which is sacred, and you can somehow sense that the essence of the flower and the essence of yourself are one and the same. And that is the recognition of oneness, which is all the ancient mystics and so on have spoken about this. And that is just what you love it. Basically, that means that is what love is. You recognize yourself in the other. It doesn't have to be another human being, or it's beautiful when you recognize yourself in another human being, but you also recognize yourself in nature. So this is important, because that brings, so allow nature to teach you stillness. Now nature, of course, embodies a completely different degree of consciousness from yours. I will now make a mystical statement. You don't have to believe it. The flower loves it when you give it attention, because you add something enormous to the flower by giving it attention. The flower is not aware of its own beauty, it just is. And when you unite your consciousness with the flower, through you, because there's ultimately you're not, the separateness that we see in the physical is not really there. Through you, the flower gets a glimpse of self-recognition. The flower recognizes itself. So when nature is waiting for you to recognize it, and what nature alone is also involved in, is part of the evolving universe that is becoming more conscious. And humans are an essential part of that on this planet. So when a human becomes conscious of nature, the nature through the human becomes conscious of itself. And it's an amazing process. Whether or not this is true, you have to kind of find out for yourself by being more attentive in nature and honoring what's there, and as much as possible relate to nature without the screen of knowledge. When you need it, it's fine. If a child asks you, what's the name of this flower? You tell the child what the name is, but hopefully you don't say, this is a rose. Hopefully you say to the child, it's called a rose. There's a very big difference between saying, this is a rose, because that would be saying to the child that this concept is what it is, that the sound rose is that. No, it's only a name. The name of it is rose. And so to prevent the child from getting lost in concepts at an early age, always, once you've taught a word, always bring the child back to the actual experience of it, so that the child does not come to the misperception that the name of the flower is the flower. There's a depth to the flower that gets totally covered up when you mistake the name for the flower. So that's why when you truly want to see it, you have to remove the mental label, and you can only do that by being present. The alertness rises, and then you communicate, you relate to the flower without the screen of concepts. So this was something to do with presence, this part of the answer, although I went some distance away from the answer of anger arising and catching it. So it's vital to generate presence in normal life, in nature and so on, so that it's there when the pain body arises.